All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So yesterday it was announced at there's going to be announced at next week's Board of Governors meeting for the NBA that a vote will be held on league expansion, which is most likely going to pave the way for a new franchise to be placed in Las Vegas, as well as bringing professional basketball back to the city of Seattle. There have been rumblings about this possibly happening for some time. And I personally do not see the NBA getting this close to the altar only to back out of it. It's been 18 years since the original Sonics left Seattle to become the Oklahoma City Thunder. And in Oklahoma City, the Thunder have enjoyed success, which included them winning the NBA championship last year. The franchise's first NBA championship since the Sonics were still in Seattle back in 1979. But back in 2008, when the Sonics bid farewell to the Pacific Northwest, honestly, I thought it was a joke at first, okay? Because why? And this is the whole thing I was asking, no disrespect to Oklahoma City, but why would the NBA just turn their back on Seattle? Okay, Seattle, it's a big enough market and so much heritage, history, legacy there with the Sonics. Okay. However, the NBA finally appears ready to once again plant the flag there. But why now? Well, as always, the NBA is open for business. And, this league has not expanded since 2004 with the Charlotte Bobcats, who are now, of course, the Charlotte Hornets. But, of course, expansion brings with it more media markets, more money, and, of course, those expansion fees that must be paid to join a league. And as we've seen from the NBA, they have no problem whatsoever leaving no stone unturned in the pursuit of another dollar or two. Now, of course, expansion fees also mean more capital for the NBA. And of course, this is going to work because there are some folks with some deep pockets out there in the Pacific Northwest who would love to be a part of a new ownership group for the Sonics. Now, yes, the original Supersonics should have never left Seattle, in my opinion, okay? But at least now the NBA is finally attempting to right that wrong that it allowed to happen 18 years ago. Now, if this vote goes through, which I expect it to, you can expect the Sonics to be back in the NBA by 2029. And when they do, the franchise history of the Thunder that predated their time in Oklahoma City would return to Seattle. Now, the new Sonics would clearly already have a place to play. Climate Pledge Arena is there. It's home to the Kraken of the NHL. And when this decision does become official, as far as the Sonics returning to Seattle, I'll tell you like this: that line to purchase tickets for the Sonics might extend as far as Tacoma or Spokane or even further. Okay. But I'm going to say it like this: it's really hard to not mention the Sonics for nearly 2 decades, as there's so much rich basketball history with this franchise. And honestly, you cannot tell the history of the NBA overall without the Seattle Supersonics. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, the rivalries that the original Sonics had in the Western Conference with the likes of the Houston Rockets, the Portland Trailblazers, and the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay. The rivalry with the Rockets in the 80s, the 70s, and the 90s, and of course the Lakers throughout their time. There's going to be a potential new rivalry with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Granted that it's been so long, and none of the players that were on the Sonics when they left to go to Oklahoma City are still with this team. Some are still in the league, yes. But nonetheless, the fact that it's going to be the Thunder and everybody knows that the Thunder is the original Sonics, it's kind of like um, when the Baltimore Ravens, when they left Cleveland to become the original Browns left Cleveland to become the Ravens, and they returned to Baltimore. I think about the first time that the Indianapolis Colts returned to Baltimore. Granted, different crew because it was about 15 years, 15 to 16 years after the fact. But nonetheless, um, it was still heartbreaking for a lot of people to see the Colts go to a new city. And then, of course, the rivalry with the Ravens and the Browns, of course, the original Browns who are now in Baltimore, and of course, the new Cleveland Browns that are there. So, nonetheless, there's going to be a rivalry between the Sonics and the Thunder. Make no mistake about it. But again, you think about the basketball history for this organization. I think about the 90s Sonics. And when you think about the 90s Seattle Supersonics, it all starts with Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, and Detlef Schrempf. And I just, as soon as you mention them, you think about Gary Payton basically throwing alley oops to Sean Kemp from half court. I think about, and I'm going old school here, guys. So, like, put on your thinking caps for a minute. You youngsters checking this out, you might have to go check it out, online or something like that. NBA Jam, the Seattle Sonics, the duo of Sean Payton and Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, excuse me, in that game. It was kind of like one of the most popular duos in that video game. All right, you think about the days of the likes of Slick Watts and Downtown Freddie Brown with the Sonics. You think about other greats who have played for this franchise: Tom Chambers, Jack Sikma, and Dale Ellis, just to name a few. And KD had his rookie year in Seattle before the team moved to Oklahoma City. But we were robbed of seeing Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden play there. Okay, and who knows what could have been. And honestly, just imagine what would have happened if that trio had been together in Seattle. Okay, just the thought of what could have been. Imagine currently with the Thunder. Imagine SGA in a town like Seattle and how he would have been loved there. Okay, but make no mistake about it. The last time that I talked about the Sonics, I also talked about the allure of the NBA putting a team in Vegas. And by the end of this decade, it's going to mean that all four major sports leagues would have now set up shop in the desert after shunning the city for decades due to the gambling. But with the NBA talking expansion, that means they're going to go to 32 teams, as the Vegas and Seattle franchises would be in the Pacific time zone. One team that is currently in the West is going to have to switch over to the Eastern Conference. But who? To me, the teams that make most sense is going to be either the Memphis Grizzlies, New Orleans Pelicans, or Minnesota Timberwolves geographically. Um, it's going to happen. Make no mistake about it. One of them is going, or somebody else, but it's probably going to be one of those three. They're going to have to go west to east. With that said, when it happens, are we going to see the NBA, because you'd have 16 teams in each conference? Would the NBA just have two divisions like they had once upon a time in each league, or each conference rather, this time around, two 18 teams divisions? If you're going to do that, naturally from a geographical standpoint, putting Boston, Toronto, Brooklyn, New York, Washington, and Philly right off the bat in the same division makes a lot of sense. Kind of like the old school Atlantic Division, the way it used to be, and you'd have to figure out who those other two teams are going to be. If you put Minnesota in the East. Geographically, it makes a ton of sense to just put them in the same division with the Bulls, with the Milwaukee Bucks, the Pacers, the Pistons, and of course the Cavaliers from a geographical standpoint, from a rivalry standpoint, because we're basically talking about Big Ten country right there. And then you'd have to figure out what you would do with the likes of Atlanta, Orlando, Charlotte, and Miami. Okay, adding them into that equation. And of course, Memphis could factor into this as well, as could New Orleans. But I think most likely it's probably going to be either Minnesota or Memphis that makes the jump from the West to the East, in my opinion. Putting the Vegas team and putting the Seattle team back in, or putting them into the fray here in the Western Conference, naturally it gives vibes, or you think about the vibes of the Pacific Division, the old 17 Pacific Division. Clearly, both LA teams in that division, the other two California teams, the Kings and the Warriors, the Trailblazers. Again, the rivalry that the Sonics had with the Blazers, because they were so close in proximity. And then, of course, the Suns, and you'd put the Vegas franchise in there, put the Texas teams in the other division, kind of like how it was in the old Midwest division in the NBA. And, of course, put in the Oklahoma City Thunder into that fray as well, because they're right there, Oklahoma and Texas border. Okay. But nonetheless, the return of NBA basketball to Seattle, in my opinion, would be the crowning achievement on the watch of Adam Silver as the league's commissioner. All right, because this is something that we have needed for far too long, and it should not have taken this long for the NBA to get this serious about returning the Sonics to the NBA. And with this deal appearing to be all but done at this point, because I truly do believe it's going to happen, is there any hope in the future to seeing the league return to other markets that it left, like Vancouver, St. Louis, New Jersey, San Diego, or Buffalo? You never say never, I tell you that much, but I ain't holding my breath either. Okay. And out of all of those places that I mentioned, I think if there was ever one that it could be potentially a possibility, it would be Vancouver. But nonetheless, you figure it took the NBA this long to talk expansion and be serious about talking expansion. And you think about it, they expanded in the late '80s as well as in the mid '90s when they brought the Vancouver Grizzlies, at the time now Memphis Grizzlies, and the Toronto Raptors into the fray. But nonetheless, going to 32, I think they would be content at that number for quite some time. But nonetheless, should the basketball fans of Seattle and the surrounding areas start the process of rejoicing and getting their funds together to purchase season tickets for the Sonics? Well, it looks like, if they come back, it'll be by 2029. 2029 will be here before you blink. And honestly, I think yes, because you should be extremely excited. You're going to have some old school Sonic fans that remember how this team was. And now, if you're the NBA, you also have an opportunity to introduce your product to a new audience, to a new generation. So I think if you are a Seattle basketball fan, I think if you are a Seattle sports fan, I think if you are a sports fan in general, this is a day to rejoice. Okay. The same thing for Vegas. It's one of those where you could see the writing on the wall. The National Hockey League was the first ones to set up shop officially in Vegas with the Golden Knights. It worked out. Before you know it, the NFL was there, and MLB is working on it as well. I don't think that the A's are going to be successful in Vegas. The Raiders, it's more about just drawing people and drawing fans from other teams. The Golden Knights naturally is theirs. I think the Vegas basketball team could have success, but nonetheless, I think the bigger story right now is the fact that we are once again getting NBA basketball in the great city of Seattle. Like I've said, it should have never come to this. The Sonics should have never been taken out of Seattle. Okay, but at least now the NBA is attempting to right that wrong. This is a joyous day, like I said, for basketball fans, sports fans in Seattle, and basketball fans in the Pacific Northwest. But, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do, folks. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you are on Facebook, definitely be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And like I always say, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.